get started. It's noon on a very, very snowy day on February the 2nd. I have the great pleasure to introduce Noman Mustafa and Hamad Halem from Aviatrix. And I just wanted to take this opportunity and welcome everybody who joined us this afternoon. I know myself, I've been digging myself out of the snow for the past 24 hours. So I'm just glad I have power. So thanks for everybody who joined, and looking forward to having this conversation this afternoon. Welcome.
Hey,
So
thanks for having us.
yeah, no problem. So why don't we get started? And then first, if you don't mind, maybe just make a kind of brief introductions. Kind of your background. What's your roles and responsibilities in the organization, and then we can jump right through.
Yeah, I can go first. My name is Numan Mustafa. I run the solutions engineering team here at Aviatrix. So, a team of, I would say, black belt solutions architects in AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle. Because that's one thing we realized coming from a very, very long background in on-prem is you need to have core competency in these clouds to be able to help and advise customers who are on their cloud journey and how to build their architecture correctly. I'm also responsible for the strategic product development of Aviatrix platform. Very good to be here talking about what we are learning from our customers, specifically in terms of security and why architecture is important.
Thanks,
How do
Naman.
you want to
All
go
right.
next?
Yeah, so my name is Hamad Alam. I'm a principal architect based out of Jersey, reporting to Naman. And I've been at Aviatrix for, coming up to 2 years. Before Aviatrix, I was at VMware as a lead architect dealing with NSX, Kubernetes, and before that, Microsoft, Riverbed, and other places. But I think it's not wrong to say that right
Yeah,
now is the
yeah,
most important phase of my career. Public cloud is the next best thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's amazing because since COVID, I think the acceleration of the adoption of public cloud is tremendous. We're talking about this whole digital transformation that's happening, but no one, I think, anticipated for everybody to be remote within 2 weeks. And then on top of that, there is no way for us to get into a physical server room, right? That is kind of almost a thing of the past. And so I'm on the website, and it's really, I love numbers, and it looks so cool. Like you have, it says here, 1,500 plus years of combined networking experience. I'm assuming that's you took the whole team, and combined the. That's pretty cool. And then you have about 450 customers, and 76 million in venture investment. That's incredible. That's a big chunk of change. So somebody out there is betting on the success of the company and betting on the market, right? And then you also mentioned that you have like about 50 plus partners. So in a nutshell, what are kind of the top three problems right now for companies that are looking to adopt the public cloud, public cloud, specifically moving applications to the various different platforms? I'm assuming like the AWS, the Google, and Azure are probably the kind of the big three.
Yeah. So I can cover that. So, and I will also give you a little bit introduction about Aviatrix. So Aviatrix even though it's a startup, it's been around for about 6 plus years. Very, very mature, developed platform. We are now at least, in fact, more than 500 plus customers. Um, and I think we started developing this cloud native product. It's not a lift and shift from an on-prem things that you developed and you moved it. It was actually developed looking at to the cloud native construct of the cloud. And we started about 6, 7 years ago. And when people were actually talking about cloud, but nobody was actually doing it, right? We started to continue to build. Sherry Way, who's our founder, she continued to develop, working with some of the handful of customers who are early in the cloud, looking at what the challenges are, what the problems are. So one of the things that we sort of handle, right, is the simplicity is in automation is what cloud promises, and we do that, but we will do that with visibility, control, and advanced networking capabilities. A lot of customers who are actually moving into the cloud, they are realizing that cloud gives them the basic constructs, and they give you things to build on. Where enterprises are looking to consume things and they want advanced networking and security capabilities that does not exist natively in the cloud, right? So they want to be able to use all the goodness of cloud, but at the same time, they want to have a same visibility and advanced networking and operational capabilities that they were used to in the cloud. And I think that's one of the realization that they're seeing, that when you go into the cloud, you need to have an architecture, you need to have advanced capabilities. And then multi-cloud is becoming more and more prominent. Whether you are in one cloud today, every CIO, CTO needs to have a multi-cloud optionality or strategy in place. So they're looking for a platform that allows them to have that repeatable
And,
unified architecture.
and Newman,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I want to dissect a couple of things while you're talking. So maybe just to expand on a couple of different topics. So first of all, I find a lot of successful companies are forward thinking. You mentioned specifically that Aviatrix was doing cloud and cloud security and compliance. Before cloud, public cloud was really a thing. People just started to think about it. So I find that is a key for a lot of successful companies, because you can't become, very proficient overnight. It takes a long time. So you have to have, you have to make a bet. Like, as you mentioned, 6 years ago, there's, somebody made a bet that this is going to be a big thing. Now, if you don't mind, why do you see a multi-cloud right now is a thing? Like, why does the enterprise need to do multi-cloud? But why not focus on AWS, for example? What's the kind of driver behind picking different providers and going after them?
Yeah. So I think things have actually evolved, I would say, in the last 2 years, when this multi-cloud becoming a very common strategy now for enterprises. And the key reasons is every cloud is evolving rapidly, right? So they are building their new services, they are building their capabilities. So from an IS perspective, I think most of the clouds are becoming very equal in terms of what they provide, but services may run differently and better in one cloud over the other. And the way enterprises are looking at, they want to look at cloud providers as the unified data center where they are providing the compute, storage, networking, but they want to be able to run their network across all the clouds. And sometimes management, merger and acquisitions is one of the common thing, that here you are a customer in AWS and you acquire a company in GCP. Now all of a sudden you need to have a unified architecture across to the two clouds. And services, some services like Office 65, Windows Virtual Desktop, they run better in Azure. You may be a AWS customer dominantly, but you may want to use Oracle services, Azure services. And then similarly with GCP, right, with analytics and security, a lot of financial customers are trying to go into GCP. Right? So what we are seeing as an enterprise is that, specialized services in one cloud, as well as the merger and acquisitions and some of the other business, are the key reasons why an enterprise would want to be a multi-cloud or with multi-cloud optionality. And this is not something that you can say, okay, I will look into it when I go to multi-cloud. Your architecture, like you're building a house, you can't really come back and redo the house. You have to think about these things when you're starting small. You may be in one cloud for a number of years, but if you build architecture and foundation and security principles correctly early on, it will give you huge dividends in the future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you for clarifying that. Ahmad, do you have something to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, right? Another thing that business, so there are different tiers in the organization, right? So you have the practitioners, you have the managers, and then you have the directors and VPs and business, people who are making decisions strategically. And
Mhm.
what they want to do is they want to commoditize the public cloud for their benefit. They want the cloud providers to kind of fight for my business,
Mhm.
right? And how can I make that happen? The only way if I can make that happen is when I make my applications team give them the ability to consume from any cloud, which is, then you define the metrics: closer, faster, more
Mhm.
secure, cheaper, or whatever else is the metric that defines your business to you, right? And based on these factors, if I'm the CIO, I want my businesses to go and choose and then consume from there. Now, how can I make that happen if all of these clouds are silos of their own,
Mhm.
right? The, the only way I can make that happen if those clouds are just like the different data centers that I had. I built one in Secaucus, I built one in San Jose, I built one in Dallas. Why? Because they were faster, closer, whatever to my consumers. So to do that in multi-cloud, what I need to do is I need to build bridges between these clouds so that my app teams and infrastructure team can easily consume these services. But at the same time, the security is consistent, the networking is consistent, and most importantly, and we always forget, we are always in the race of technology and processes, we forget people, right? People is the most important thing. The biggest blocker of everything is people. So if my people who are now, going from on-prem to cloud, and they're trying it, they're in the phase of transitioning their skill set from on-prem to the cloud, how can I make it so that their skills are not transitioned locked into a single cloud? It transitions while it is applicable, available, and usable for me as the CIO in any cloud. So that's where Aviatrix comes in. Literally, we come in, we say, you want to build in a single cloud, we'll help you. You want multi-cloud optionality, we'll help you. You want a seamless infrastructure experience across clouds, that's where we come in. And when you say that I have operations teams with decades of experience of supporting my network and security infrastructure, how can I make their skill set relevant in cloud? That's where Aviatrix comes in. So those, hopefully that can.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And I've heard the same. I've heard, for example, that companies that use VMware, tend, for example, to pick and choose Azure because it's like the transition is slightly easier than Amazon AWS. So they have to pick and choose the cloud provider depending on the type of application they're looking to roll. So inherently, don't people think that the cloud is secure? I mean, you're laughing, because I've heard. So there's this whole shared responsibility model. That it's on the website, for example, Amazon, clarifies it, but I don't know if a lot of organizations, really realize that's the case. So maybe you can kind of expand on that. What is the shared responsibility model, and why is the cloud not inherently as secure as people may think?
Yeah. So maybe what I will do is I will share three observations or three trends that we are seeing generally with customers. Right. The first observation is a fact now is the cyber hygiene in the cloud is becoming a front and center of every organization now, right? Because early on when people started going to the cloud, it was mostly the DevOps guys. They were just trying to focus on agility, just get things working, right? Prove it out to the business that it can work. I can have my DevOps workloads. But now what we are seeing is people are actually shutting down their data center. I know a lot of customers who have actually given a date to their users that this is the time I'm shutting down my data centers, whether you are
Wow.
ready or not, right? What it means is now you have your mission critical workloads going into the cloud, and when your mission critical workloads are going to the cloud, and if there are attacks or security breaches are happening, it's not a DevOps team security responsibility. It actually is your security team responsibility. And what is happening is people are realizing that that was never done before in terms of a proper architecture. What the traffic flows needs to look like. Should I be doing ingress or egress? Do I need encryption at the network layer or not? So a lot of things are evolving, and cyber hygiene is becoming more and important because it's a loss to an application team who may be working for 2 years refactoring their application, and security stops them from rolling out. It's a loss to the CSP because they can't really help customer expand, right? So it's where the buck stops. The second thing that I'm seeing is um, skill security is something where a lot of people have skills in on-prem for a number of years. They're very, very good in what they have done. They know the infrastructure. As you said earlier, they have access to the compute, storage, networking. They know how the traffic is being segregated.
Hmm.
They have tiers of access to the internet. But when they go to the cloud, the constructs are all different. The way they do things are different. You don't have access to any of the compute storage and networking, right? Then and figuring out what is actually needed and how can I have a built-in native security that can help with my compliance, my audit, my regulations is becoming very, very important. And what we are seeing is enterprises are now looking for that security architecture, a proper architecture, the end-to-end architecture, which they can take to their compliance officer, their regulators, to make sure they make them realize that what I have built in is secure, right? So that their applications start to see that progressive application development framework that they are actually in the first place are going into the cloud for. So that's number two. And the third thing is what we are realizing now that security in cloud is not a shared responsibility, it's your responsibility, right? So that's something that I personally have graduated from now on, because what is happening is when the attack happens, you really cannot blame AWS if it's your workload. People are going to blame your security team, you as an architect, that you were not able to do your job. So I think what we are realizing now is security in public cloud is your responsibility. What we're realizing is, you need to figure out, what firewalls do you need, where the net encryption needs to happen, right? How you're going to educate your compliance officers, your regulators, your auditors on how your environment is protected. And yes, cloud providers do provide you some native constructs so that you can build your architecture on top of it, or you may have to rely on platform like Aviatrix or third-party firewall to be able to make sure that you have an end-to-end holistic architecture that's not only built for day one, but also, as Ahmad mentioned, operationally efficient so that your operations team can manage this. They have the proper visibility, proper analytics, security detection, so that you can start to expand and manage your environment correctly. So these are three of my observations. Ahmad, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would go back a little bit and say, so if when my kid goes to the Lego store, right, and the guy gives him a bunch of Lego pieces and then says, now it's your responsibility to build the right thing. That's exactly what it is in the public cloud, right? So the cloud provider are providing you these Lego pieces that's different things like security group, a NACL, a IAM policy, a this and a that, right? Now, it's whose responsibility it is to put it right together, right? When I go to IKEA, I buy some stuff, I bring home, I put it together. It looks right. It looks right, perfect. But when I start using, after 3 months, I see a creak somewhere, and then I realize, oh crap, I didn't bolt this screw right. And when once I start putting some pressure, now it's creaking, it's giving way, right? Those are the experiences, unfortunately, we are seeing with enterprise and public cloud, is that these bits and pieces that the cloud provider is giving, number one, these are enterprise's responsibility to put it together right. Number two, there is no proper guidance in putting it together right inside a single cloud. When you look at even a single cloud provider, for example, AWS, all their constructs only work within a VPC, as an example. And even there, if you really think, from a networking perspective, let me name a few things. Let's say you have security group, you have NACL, you have VPC route table, you have subnet, you have IGWA, you have NAT gateway, right? 6-7 different things inside a AWS VPC. A security group has no idea what the NACL is doing. A IGW has no idea what the NAT gateway is doing. A subnet has no idea what the route table are doing. These are complete island silos of their own. Now it's your responsibility to put it together. Now you take it in one VPC, now you stamp it out to hundreds or thousands of VPCs. Now you stamp it out to multiple regions, then you stamp it out to multiple clouds. And imagine the exponential rise in complexity for enterprises. And if the enterprise does not have a way for somebody to come in and help them build it right, build it in the way that it's consistent, it's secure, it's still usable. I mean, those are all the challenges that we're seeing day in, day out enterprises running into.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the IKEA example. I always shudder when I think about it, like putting it together. And the worst part is trying to take it apart if you want to move. That's almost impossible.
Absolutely.
Just sell it.
Just throw it out. So, typically from my experience, companies do like a lot of different things, right? So you have a bunch of solutions out there, right? Excuse me. And typically there's, it's the 80-20 rule. There's 80% of the things are kind of nice, that you provide are kind of nice to have and are great, but companies really sign a dotted line and they buy because of these 20% of what things that you do. And also I find when you do a demo, you can tell because the people are all of a sudden getting closer to the screen, right? They're like, okay, yeah, this is kind of the wow, the magic, because, and I also find that magic happens when somebody was struggling,
Mhm.
prior to Aviatrix, really struggling with that point, and then you show them something that they go, wow, and they go, this is what I want. What is that for you? What, because I'm sure you guys are both professionals, done this a lot. What within the product line, is really key for the company and for your customers, that they go out and become customers long term.
So it's an interesting question, Noman. Chime in. So the first thing is, it depends on who you are, right?
Hmm.
An enterprise is not a single entity, right?
Right.
It depends
Agreed.
on who you are. So are you security? Are you networking? Are you operations? Are you automation, right? It depends on who you are, and Aviatrix has something that attracts for each of these. And today, because we're talking security, so I'm gonna kind of lean towards the security aspects. So number one thing that we see is the need of encryption. So if you think about on-premise world, right? My data center, it was trusted boundary. Everything inside here is trusted. I have perimeter secured. I'm all good, right? My CISO or whoever there is, my auditor is going to give me a checkbox. Now I'm moving this critical infrastructure workload, revenue impacting workload into public cloud, right? The first question is public cloud on its own a trusted entity for me or not? Right, that goes back to the shared responsibility model, right? Yes, it is to some extent trusted, because I'm trusting and I'm putting my stuff there, but it's not that I don't have to do anything myself, right? So that's where the first thing comes in, where customers are like, hey, I'm putting my stuff there, but I need to encrypt everything. And when I encrypt, I need to encrypt the disks, right? The data at rest. I need to encrypt at the application layer, but I also need to encrypt data in transit. The challenge with large organizations are that you're not running one application, you're running hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications. It's extremely hard to go to each application team and each vendor to ask them to go to a certain level of security, right? So the best way for infrastructure team is to ask an applications team to do security, but then encrypt the data plane, right? So that's where Aviatrix has a feature called high performance encryption, where we can give up to 90 gig encrypted traffic within the cloud. And when you're connecting, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is when you use the direct connect or express route kind of things, these are the technologies that connect your on-premise to the cloud. They're not encrypted. They're completely unencrypted, untrusted zones. So you need to encrypt that as well. And if you try to encrypt that natively on a 10 gig circuit, you will be limited to 1 gig throughput. That's a severe limitation. And
Hmm.
Aviatrix has a patented solution that gives line rate encryption, like 10 gig encrypted traffic from on-prem to cloud. So that's number one thing from a security perspective, encryption, because everything that Aviatrix builds is fully encrypted. All the data plane is fully encrypted. Number two is insertion of next gen firewall. So cloud provider provides some security services like security group and NSG, which are limited to layer 4 mostly. They're starting to come out with some basic layer 7 services, but they're not enterprise grade. So what almost all of our large enterprises are doing is that they're leveraging the trusted security providers for them, for example, Palo Altos and Checkpoints and Fortinets and these guys, right, in the cloud. But the problem that they're running into is, if I'm the customer and I ask Palo Alto or Checkpoint, somebody saying, hey, I want to use your firewall to protect my traffic, they'll say, go here's the firewall. But the problem for me as a customer is, okay, there's a traffic which is going between VPC 1 and VPC 2. How do I get that traffic to the firewall? Right? Something has to make that happen, right? So that's a huge challenge. So Aviatrix platform has a service insertion capability where customers can selectively choose any traffic, any VPC or VNet, and say, hey, this traffic needs to go to the firewall. So we work closely with Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Fortinet, and F5 and others, where we help those vendors be relevant in public cloud. Right? That's two. And number three, I would say, which is very common use case for PCI compliance or anybody who's trying to do that, which is when you need to put some workload, when you have some workload in the cloud that needs access to internet. Typically what the cloud provider will give you is a NAT device, means, okay, put a NAT device and the application can go to the internet, but it can go to anywhere on the internet. How do I control that? Right? If I have a payment processing app, it only needs to talk to, let's say, Visa or MasterCard or like these three things, not everything. The solution usually is to put a next gen firewall there, but that's very expensive, cost management. So Aviatrix has a FQDN filtering solution, which a lot of people use for PCI compliance, which provides advanced netting capabilities. It limits traffic to specific allowed destinations. And it's one of our, quick win kind of thing, which a lot of customers like. So there are a lot of other things, but I would keep it to three.
I just want
Love
to
that.
add one thing here is, our platform is pretty comprehensive when it comes to networking and security capabilities. But we have this start anywhere, grow in anywhere philosophy where things can be spin up very, very quickly in the cloud. So we deploy our controller in AWS, Azure, GCP, and then controls the networking security on all the clouds. And then, just like Hamad mentioned, this egress FQDN use case is a matter of within 2 hours you are up and running, right? And a lot of customers who have come to us, they came in panic because they have a compliance coming up, PCI, HIPAA, and their auditor, they need to prove something to auditor that their outbound traffic is secure and controlled. So they spin up our FQDN based gateways, because if you are not doing FQDN, you have to manage this long list of IP addresses. It just doesn't become scalable. So having that centralized controller to be able to manage those egress FQDN gateways and manage the policies and be able to have dashboards that can show you what your application is trying to get to and you have full control is a very, very quick and powerful way to be aligned to your auditor's requirements around security controls. We have seen that with many, many customers, and from their point onwards, you have the foundation controller up and running, you have some sort of a transit up and running, and then you continue to build more muscle in terms of what other capabilities, like Hamad mentioned, end-to-end transit, the service insertion, connectivity to the on-prem, you continue to add those capabilities. So we have seen many customers like that start the journey.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really a comprehensive answer. So that's great. So a couple things. One is maybe I'd love to discuss maybe a success story where, again, I think you kind of mentioned it, PCI compliance, but maybe one more. And then I would love to hear what's next, in the sense that, typically when it comes down to there's a big transaction, and the executives come over and you do the whole, like, the kid and caboodle of like presentation, and then there is a couple of slides talking about the futures. What is coming down the pipe, to show the mature level of the company in terms of development, in terms of like the view. So I would love to, if you can, give us an idea of where the company is going and then what's next for it. But yeah, maybe first starts with kind of like maybe one other type of success story that you can share. You don't have to mention names, and then kind of talk about the futures.
Yeah. But do you want to pick a good success story? So maybe like,
Yeah, so I'll talk about because I'm in New Jersey, and I think it's a lot of customers here from pharmaceuticals. So interestingly, Aviatrix is a hit with pharmaceuticals. We have large number of customers who are either biotech or pharmaceutical customers. So one of our customers who have very strict security requirements, and they have a lot of different business units within their organization. And these business units have been running their own part of their infrastructure on-prem world. And then these guys also, this customer also does a lot of mergers and acquisitions as part of their growth. So one of the challenges that their cloud team had is that, how do I build an environment in the cloud where I can, from an infrastructure perspective, I want to keep control, but at the same time, I need to give the line of business or the application team the ability to kind of do their own things without me getting in their way. Because that's the thing, right? If you really think about why the enterprise are going into the cloud, or applications teams are going into the cloud, is because of the agility. The infrastructure was slow and the cloud team and the dev teams or app teams go into cloud for agility. Now, if the infrastructure comes in the cloud and then slows the app teams down again, what's the point? Right? So that's exactly what with this customer wanted to avoid. So what we did for them is we Aviatrix architecture, and maybe another time we can go deep dive into architecture. The architecture has very pod like design where you define a single pod once and you can stamp it out multiple times, and that pod has the capability of providing all the things that I've talked about: egress control, next gen firewall insertion, encryption. So that pod checked the boxes for these guys, tech, that all those things that they needed, and they were able to provide this pod like architecture to each business unit. And then the business unit had the a leverage of choosing whether they want next gen firewall, whether they don't want next gen firewall, which vendor they want, because sometimes they wanted to choose different things. And at the same time they had the ability to choose whether they are going to control the security policy or they want central IT to control the security policy. So basically, from an infrastructure team perspective, this is their dream come true. I keep the control and I give enough control for the app teams to do what they want to do while providing connectivity. And then the same thing extended to multi-cloud, because now they can give their their teams the ability to choose cloud provider. So recently they came out, they said that OCI gave a really sweet deal to their database team that if they move their databases to the hosted version of Oracle, they're going to get a big discount. And they're like, we're not in OCI. How can we get in OCI? And Aviatrix platform works in AWS, Azure, GCP, and OCI. So we turned them around and we provided the same capabilities in OCI as they had in Azure before. So, that was pretty cool for them, and a good
Yeah,
one for
probably
me.
paid for itself just by the
Yeah,
cost saving moving to
Just
yeah,
want
cloud.
quickly
That's
add
great.
one quick story, right? It's very similar, but we have a customer that specializes in actionable intelligence, right? So they have actionable intelligence. They study the business, and mostly, let's say Home Depot and Lowe's, they're two end customers, and you want to know what's working and what's not working, what is the user behavior, what is the customer behavior. So what they do is they have an on-prem router, and they collect the call center information, the camera feed on what time of the day families are coming, what are they looking for, do we have a trend in terms of what they come and buy. So they provide this actionable intelligence, and that is one customer who said that we will never go outside AWS, we will always be in one cloud. There's no way we can go to any other cloud. We are pretty happy with AWS, and a lot of customers are actually happy with AWS. But the thing is, the business decides whether you want to go in another cloud. You yourself as an architect cannot decide. So what happened is, overnight they had got a customer, a big multi-million dollar deal, and they wanted to be in GCP. That yes, we want your business, but we want to be able to, if you can only manage us in GCP, we can become your customers, right? And with the ability of Aviatrix extending to GCP, we were able to build that transit architecture with the same security posture, same policies within few days, and they're up and running and they're able to secure that contract. So I think what is happening is the business will dictate. You need to be ready from an architecture perspective, from a security posture perspective. They had a huge use case about overlapping IP addresses from different partners connecting to the cloud. We solved that in a very secure manner. So these type of business cases will continue to evolve, and from an architecture perspective, you need to be ready that should be able to extend your posture, security posture, to different clouds as well. So another great
Yeah,
story from us.
it is a great story, and that flexibility is key, as well as you mentioned. At the end of the day, it's the business that drives IT,
Absolutely.
not
And
the
each cloud
developer.
is getting better. They will build relationships. They will make these sweet deals that you cannot say no to. Like, not because there is a large amount of workloads that just rely or want infrastructure as service. They may not be needing specialized services from one cloud. So why not I go into an Oracle? Why not I go into a GCP, right, and have 70% discount on some of my workloads? I think it will be business who will be dictating it, and this cloud osmosis of workloads moving into different cloud will happen. From an architecture perspective, you just need to be ready. Now, regarding your other questions, right, in terms of where we are heading, right? So from from a cloud networking security perspective, we are pretty mature platform, 6 to 7 years of development. not only the platform, but also the support organization, the people who are doing architecture and design. They are very, very comfortable in advising to our end customers, because it's not about on-prem person advising you on the cloud. It's people who have been living and breathing cloud for the last year, many years, are becoming trusted advisor for a lot of cloud architects. Um, so what we are, what, and I think for some of the new startups who are coming into this area, because multi-cloud, cloud networking security is becoming a new sort of a quadrant of its own, and even Gartner is sort of defining this as separately now. Uh, what is happening is, since we have this head start in terms of our maturity and 500 plus customers is a good example of that. So very, very big logos. We are trying to go into the application layer space. So we want to be able to have more application level analytics. So application team can start to leverage networking security and almost make it like a self-service for them to troubleshoot performance challenges in the application layer. Right now, they do not have visibility of that networking layer. So you want to basically build a lot more application intelligence and make our platform as app optimized infrastructure. So right, so before it becomes an issue, you can alert them, or you can basically take actions to correct it before it becomes a problem for your enterprise teams. And this other thing you're trying to do is go more. So once you have the center of gravity in the cloud, what you want to be able to do is connect back to next generation of on-prem endpoints, which could be your edge IoT, it could be your outpost, it could be Azure stack. Because at the end of the day, they are part of the same infrastructure. It's just that center of gravity has now shifted in the cloud, and you want to be able to connect them in a very modern way, right? So all the capabilities that we have around encryption, around visibility, around control, around traffic engineering, around network correctness, you want to be able to extend that when your applications in the cloud connect back to your edge IoT or 5G micro data centers, connected cars, right? Or all of those outposts and stack use cases that people are deploying. So in a way, what Aviatrix will offer is a holistic platform around networking security in the cloud, connecting to the traditional on-prem and branch data centers, but also the new generation of on-prem devices, which could be your edge IoT, connected cars, and outposts and stack. So very
Yeah.
excited about this future direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds very compelling as well. It makes total sense to start monitoring the application since you already start seeing the traffic anyway. So now
Mhm.
to provide that extra level of visibility into application troubleshooting is just natural. And then also with that, probably another security layer to see if there's any applications that are misbehaving. Um,
Absolutely.
Good. I feel like we should we ran out of time, but we should almost do like a part B of this and maybe dive into deeper into this into the architecture. But yeah, maybe we'll do that. We'll see. Thank you everybody for joining. Much appreciated. Looking forward to potentially see you in the next event. So if you
Yeah.
have any questions, where is the best way to kind of reach Noman and Hamad? Like, what's the best way to reach you guys? And then if somebody wants to know more about Aviatrix and maybe ask for like some trial. I don't know what's the process of like. Maybe you can provide some insight.
Yeah, so one of the best ways to reach us would be info@aviatrix.com. So I'm just gonna, maybe share my screen here for a second. So
Mm-hmm.
it's recorded as
I
part of
will
the
take a
recording as well.
picture
Yeah,
of
so yeah, so basically, the best way to reach us would be info@aviatrix.com. There's can you see my screen right?
Yeah,
Or
you see the dashboard, but it does look cool.
oh no. Okay, so this one, right?
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
can see this, right? Yeah, so info@aviatrix.com is probably one of the best ways to reach us, and we are very active on LinkedIn, so you can reach out to us anyways. I would highly recommend, like, anybody who's going, look at, just search YouTube for Aviatrix or Aviatrix Copilot, and there's a lot of good demos and stuff. And also, to get started and use the product, you don't necessarily need to talk to anybody. Like, you don't need to talk to a salesperson or anybody. Aviatrix is
But you guys are
available.
nice. I would love to talk to you if I had a choice.
Absolutely, we would love to either. But if you wanted, you can. Aviatrix controller or Aviatrix product is available in the marketplace of AWS, Azure, GCP, and OCI. So you can just deploy it yourself and start consuming. It's super cheap to start, and I mean, literally for a dollar an hour, you can build a fully multi-cloud infrastructure. We have something called Aviatrix Sandbox Starter that automates like a small POC build, which would automatically deploy the components and deploy multiple VPCs and VNets and build multi-cloud connectivity. And you can do all of that without needing to talk to anyone at Aviatrix. Of course, you can go to Aviatrix website, and there's a chat bot there, which is manned by an actual person. So you can put your questions there, and then you get in touch with us. So there's a lot of ways we're out there to chat with you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. So again, looking forward, and thank you very much for joining all. Much appreciated.
Great.
Thank you. Take
Thanks
care.
all.
Take care. See you in the next session.